Welcome back to Starbound Valor HFY. The rise of humanity continues. The alarm started at the Earth Deep Space Station without any warning. At first, the sound was soft, like a distant echo, but within seconds it became loud and sharp. Technicians looked up from their screens in confusion. Red lights filled the room. Data numbers changed faster than anyone had ever seen. One officer whispered, "That is not a glitch." The main screen zoomed out, and thousands of red dots appeared at once. Someone counted quickly, then stopped. Their voice shook as they spoke again. "Sir, it is not hundreds. It is not thousands. It is 9,900 ships." The room fell into silence. No one breathed. No one moved. They were not looking at an army. They were looking at the end of the world. Across Earth, the same picture appeared on every military screen. The sky above the planet did not change yet, but space was already full. The alien fleet had entered Earth space in perfect formation. They were silent. No message. No signal. No warning. Just power and numbers. The commanders knew one truth at that moment. This was not a visit. This was an execution. Humanity had been judged without a trial. General Marcus Hale stood in the command room of Earth Defense. His face was calm, but his eyes showed fire. He had trained for war all his life, but nothing prepared him for this. 9,900 ships meant complete destruction. Even the strongest empires of the galaxy never used such force on one planet. This was hatred. This was fear. Or this was a message. Hale spoke slowly. "They did not come to talk. They came to erase us." Cities across Earth felt the change even before the first shot was fired. The sky seemed darker, not because of clouds, but because people felt something heavy in their hearts. News channels showed the alien fleet images. Children cried. Adults held their families close. Some prayed. Some prepared to fight. Humanity had no time to run. There was nowhere to hide. The alien fleet moved closer. Their ships were massive, sharp, and cold, like weapons made by a cruel mind. They were built for one purpose only: destruction. Inside the lead ship, the alien commanders watched Earth like hunters watching weak prey. They believed humans were soft, divided, and slow. They had studied Earth from afar and saw chaos, wars, and weakness. To them, this was an easy victory. They did not expect resistance. They expected silence after fire. On Earth, the defense systems awakened. Deep underground bases opened. Hidden space platforms came online. Satellites changed position. Energy weapons charged slowly, like sleeping giants opening their eyes. Humanity had prepared in secret for years. They never told the galaxy. They never showed their true strength. This was their last shield, their final answer to extinction. A young officer named Ryan Cole stood at his station, hands shaking. He was not afraid of death. He was afraid of failure. He looked at the screen and whispered, "How do you fight the sky?" His commander placed a hand on his shoulder and said, "You don't fight the sky. You become the storm." The alien fleet finally made its first move. Hundreds of smaller ships moved forward, spreading like dark birds across space. They aimed at Earth's outer defense satellites. The first shots were fired. Space lit up with bright flashes. One by one, Earth's old satellites were destroyed. To the aliens, it was proof of human weakness. They believed the battle was already won. But they did not know the truth. Those satellites were bait. General Hale gave a simple order: activate Phase 1. Suddenly, space changed. Hidden platforms revealed themselves from behind the moon, from deep orbits, from dark zones that scanners could not read. Long-range weapons charged with blue and white light. The silence of space was broken by power. Humanity had not answered yet. They had only watched. Now they were ready. The first human shot was slow and quiet, but its impact was terrifying. One alien ship disappeared in a flash of light. Not damaged. Not burning. Gone. Erased from existence. The alien fleet paused for less than a second, confused. Then another ship vanished. And another. Panic spread through their formation. They did not expect this. They did not plan for this. Earth was not weak. Earth was waiting. On Earth, people saw the news. The first alien ship destroyed by human hands. Hope exploded across the planet. Tears turned into screams of courage. Humanity was not helpless. Humanity was dangerous. The alien commanders shouted orders. They sent thousands of ships forward. Their pride was wounded. Their fear had just been born. The sky over Earth began to glow as energy weapons crossed space like burning lines. The battle of survival had begun. Ryan watched as enemy ships fell like insects in fire. He whispered, "We are not prey." His screen showed hundreds of targets locking at once. The system spoke in a calm voice, "Weapons ready." He pressed the control. Light answered him. The sky truly turned black now, not with ships, but with debris. Broken metal drifted across space. Fires burned without sound. The alien invasion had changed shape. What they planned as a slaughter was becoming a war. General Hale watched the destruction and spoke quietly. They wanted extinction. "We will give them a lesson." Far away, the alien fleet began to understand a terrible truth. They had not entered a weak planet space. They had entered the territory of a hidden predator. And somewhere in the chaos, the first thought of escape was born inside the alien mind. Because for the first time since the invasion began, they were not thinking about victory. They were thinking about survival. The alien fleet did not slow down after the first shock because pride was stronger than fear in their minds, and they believed Earth's weapons were only a trick that would soon fail. Their commanders ordered a full advance, and thousands of ships pushed forward at once, filling space like a living wall of steel. They fired heavy beams toward Earth's defense platforms, trying to crush them with pure numbers. Explosions lit the darkness as some human stations were hit, and fragments scattered into space. To the aliens, this looked like proof that Earth could still bleed. They believed that if they kept pushing, humanity would break. On Earth, General Hale watched the battle with cold focus. He knew Phase 1 was only a test. He also knew the aliens were walking into a trap built over decades. He raised his hand and gave another calm order, "Activate Phase 2." Hidden human warships that had stayed silent now moved from deep space shadows. They were smaller than alien battleships but faster and sharper in design. Their engines burned with quiet power, and their weapons locked onto targets with perfect precision. These ships were built for one job only, to hunt. They did not charge forward blindly. They moved like wolves, spreading out, surrounding parts of the alien fleet, and striking from many angles at once. Alien ships began to fall faster now. Not one or two, but dozens in seconds. The aliens tried to adjust their formation, but confusion spread. Their communication lines filled with panic and anger. They had expected weak resistance, not a living defense network that thought and moved like a single mind. Inside one alien command ship, the High Commander slammed his claws against the control table and shouted orders. He demanded more firepower, more speed, more destruction. He could not accept that a small planet like Earth could challenge their empire. His officers obeyed, but fear was already in their eyes. They saw their ships vanish without warning. They saw their strongest armor fail under human weapons. This was no longer an easy slaughter. This was a fight against something prepared. On Earth, Ryan Cole worked without stopping, his hands moving fast across the controls. His fear had turned into sharp focus. Every target he locked felt like a step away from extinction. Each enemy ship destroyed was one less threat to his family, his planet, his people. He watched his screen as alien fighters tried to rush Earth's inner defense ring. They moved fast, hoping to break through before being erased. Ryan whispered, "Not today," and released a wave of energy fire that cut through them like light through fog. Several alien ships exploded, their remains spinning away into darkness. Around him, other officers did the same. The command room was quiet, not because of fear, but because everyone was locked into survival. The alien fleet started to lose its shape. What had been a perfect formation became scattered and broken. Some ships pushed forward in blind rage. Others pulled back in sudden doubt. Their unity was cracking. General Hale noticed the change and nodded slowly. This was the moment he had waited for. He ordered Earth's long-range cannons to fire. These weapons were massive and slow but carried power beyond anything the aliens had faced. When they fired, space itself seemed to shake. Huge beams of energy crossed the battlefield and struck the heart of the alien fleet. Entire clusters of ships vanished in bright storms of light. Hundreds were lost in a single wave. The aliens finally understood something was terribly wrong. Their numbers were no longer protecting them. Their size was now their weakness. The more ships they had, the more targets humanity could destroy. Panic spread through their ranks like fire through dry leaves. Some alien captains broke formation and tried to escape, but human hunter ships followed them closely. There was no hiding in open space. The battle was turning into a chase. On Earth, news channels showed the destruction. People watched in shock as alien ships fell again and again. Fear slowly changed into belief. Humanity could survive this. Humanity could win. Crowds gathered in cities, not to run, but to watch history being written in fire above their world. Parents held their children and whispered that Earth was fighting back. The alien commanders tried to regain control. They ordered a massive energy strike toward Earth itself, hoping to force humans into defense and slow their attack. Thousands of beams shot toward the planet at once. Earth's shield systems activated immediately. A glowing barrier formed around the planet, absorbing the impact. The sky above Earth burned with light, but the surface remained safe. The shields held strong. This was another secret the aliens never expected. Earth was not only armed. Earth was protected. The alien commander watched the failed strike in silence. For the first time, doubt fully replaced confidence. He realized this mission had been built on lies. Earth was not weak. Earth was not divided. Earth was a fortress. General Hale leaned forward and spoke quietly, "They are learning." He knew learning came with pain. He ordered a focused counterattack on the alien command ships. Human hunter fleets moved fast, targeting the leaders of the invasion. One by one, major alien command vessels were destroyed. Their fleet lost direction. Without clear orders, chaos took over. Alien ships collided, fired wildly, and wasted energy on empty space. The slaughter they planned was turning against them. Ryan saw a massive alien battleship on his screen, larger than anything he had faced. Its weapons charged, ready to fire. He felt a moment of fear, then calm. He locked his targeting system and fired. Several human ships joined his attack. The combined strike tore through the alien ship's armor, and it exploded in a giant flash. Ryan closed his eyes for 1 second. He was not proud. He was relieved. Each destroyed ship meant Earth lived 1 second longer. The battlefield was now filled with wreckage. What once looked like an unstoppable armada was becoming a graveyard of metal and fire. The alien fleet was no longer attacking as one. It was surviving as individuals. That was the greatest change. They had stopped thinking like conquerors and started thinking like prey. Far from Earth, some alien ships finally turned and ran without orders. It was the first sign of retreat. General Hale saw it and allowed himself a small breath. This was only the beginning. The real slaughter had not even started yet. And in the hearts of the alien survivors, a new truth was forming, slow and painful. Earth was not a target. Earth was a warning. The battle grew more violent as the alien fleet realized their mistake, and fear began to spread through their ranks like a dark sickness. What was once a perfect formation was now broken into scattered groups of ships trying to protect themselves. Some fired wildly, others tried to hide behind larger vessels, and many no longer followed any command. The space around Earth was turning into a burning ocean of metal and light. Human hunter ships moved through the chaos with deadly calm, striking weak points, destroying engines, cutting communication lines, and leaving the enemy blind and lost. General Hale watched every movement from the command center, his eyes fixed on the main display where the number of enemy ships was slowly dropping. He knew this moment was critical because the aliens were no longer confident, but they were still dangerous. A wounded beast could be more deadly than a proud one. He ordered the fleets to tighten their attack, not to rush, not to waste energy, but to keep the pressure constant so the aliens would never regain control. On Earth, people watched the sky, and although most of the fighting happened far beyond what their eyes could see, the glow of distant explosions painted the night in strange colors. Fear still lived in their hearts, but now it was mixed with something stronger, hope. The alien commanders tried to save their pride by launching a massive counterattack. Thousands of their remaining ships fired at once toward human platforms and fleets. Space flashed with endless lines of energy. Several human ships were hit and destroyed, and their loss was felt deeply. Each ship carried brave souls who knew the risk and chose to stand anyway. Ryan Cole saw 2 friendly ships vanish on his screen, and his chest tightened, but he did not slow down. He whispered their names under his breath and focused harder. This was not the time for grief. This was the time for survival. He locked onto 3 enemy ships moving together and fired in quick sequence. All 3 were destroyed before they could even react. Around him, other officers did the same, turning pain into precision. The alien fleet was now losing ships faster than it could replace them. Their numbers, once terrifying, were becoming meaningless. The space battlefield was filling with wreckage, and navigation became harder for both sides. Alien ships crashed into broken metal, engines failed, and some vessels were destroyed simply because they could not avoid the debris. The slaughter was no longer clean. It was messy, chaotic, and cruel. General Hale ordered Earth's heavy carriers to move forward. These massive human ships had stayed in the back until now, waiting for the right moment. When they advanced, their presence changed the battlefield. They carried squadrons of smaller fighters and powerful long-range cannons. The aliens, seeing these giants approach, felt their fear grow deeper. They had believed Earth had already shown its best. They were wrong. The carriers released waves of fighters that spread out like a storm of light. These fighters were fast, small, and deadly. They attacked engines, weapon systems, and control centers. Alien ships began to drift powerless in space, easy targets for larger human weapons. Inside the alien command ships, panic reached a breaking point. Officers argued. Orders contradicted each other. Some demanded retreat, others demanded total destruction of Earth even if it meant losing everything. Their unity was gone. Their confidence was shattered. They had entered Earth space as hunters, and now they were trapped like prey in a cage of fire. One alien commander screamed that Earth must be using forbidden technology, that no single planet should have such power. But his words brought no comfort. The truth was simpler and more terrifying. Humans had prepared. They had watched. They had waited. Ryan saw a massive alien transport ship trying to escape behind a cloud of debris. It was not built for battle, but it carried important command systems. He reported it immediately, and several human ships changed direction. Together they fired, cutting its engines and leaving it helpless. Moments later, a heavy beam from a human carrier ended it. The explosion was huge, and fragments spread like dark rain through space. Ryan leaned back for 1 second and closed his eyes. The silence in his heart was heavy, but he reminded himself that if they failed, Earth would burn. There was no other choice. The alien fleet attempted one final organized strike. They gathered what remained of their strongest ships and pushed them forward in a desperate wave. It was not strategy anymore. It was survival mixed with rage. Human sensors detected the movement instantly. General Hale spoke one short sentence: "End it." Earth's fleets focused all firepower on that advancing group. The space between them became a wall of light. One by one, the alien ships were torn apart. Some tried to turn away, but it was too late. Their energy shields failed, their armor cracked, and their engines died. The desperate wave collapsed into a storm of explosions. Hundreds of ships vanished in minutes. The heart of the invasion was destroyed. Across the battlefield, the remaining alien ships began to retreat without order. No formation. No pride. Just fear. They turned their engines away from Earth and fled into deep space, leaving behind their dead and broken. This was the moment when the war changed its name. It was no longer a battle. It was a hunt. Human fleets did not chase blindly. They selected targets carefully, destroying ships that were slow or damaged, letting panic spread further. The idea of survival pushed the aliens to abandon each other. Some ships even blocked others in their rush to escape. Their empire's honor was gone. Only fear remained. On Earth, people saw the updates and understood that something historic was happening. Humanity was not only surviving. Humanity was winning. The invaders who came to erase them were now running for their lives. General Hale allowed himself a rare smile, but it was not joyful. It was heavy with responsibility. He knew this was only the middle of the story. The aliens would not forget this. The galaxy would not forget this. Earth had shown its true face, not as a victim, but as a force that could not be crushed. In the dark of space, surrounded by fire and wreckage, the alien fleet finally understood the full meaning of their mistake. They had entered Earth space with 9,900 ships, believing numbers meant power. Now, as their fleet burned and their survivors fled, they learned the truth. Power did not belong to the many. It belonged to the prepared. The battlefield no longer looked like a place of attack, but like a place of judgment. Because the alien fleet was no longer moving forward with confidence, it was breaking apart in fear, and every second that passed made their situation worse. Human fleets advanced with calm and control, not rushing, not wasting energy, striking only where it mattered most. General Hale watched the tactical map and saw the enemy numbers falling faster than before, and he knew this was the moment when power fully changed hands. The aliens had lost their formation, their leadership, and their belief in victory, and without belief, even the largest army became weak. He gave the order to tighten the net, to close the space around the fleeing ships, to turn panic into capture and destruction. Human warships moved into new positions, forming wide arcs that blocked escape routes, while fast hunter ships rushed ahead to cut off the slower alien vessels. The aliens tried to fire back, but their shots were wild and desperate, no longer aimed with strategy but with fear. Many of their weapons failed because their systems were damaged or overloaded, and each failure pushed them deeper into hopelessness. Ryan Cole felt the shift in the battle, and he knew they were no longer defending Earth, they were now deciding the fate of the invasion. He watched an alien ship try to hide behind a cloud of debris, its engines burning unevenly, and he targeted it with cold focus. One clean shot removed its power core, and the ship went dark, drifting like a dead body in space. He did not celebrate, he only moved to the next target, because survival did not allow emotions. Around him, the command room was filled with quiet voices and fast commands, not chaos, not shouting, just the sound of people doing their duty with absolute concentration. The alien fleet attempted to regroup in small clusters, hoping numbers in small groups could protect them, but human scanners detected every movement. Earth's technology read energy trails, heat patterns, and space disturbances with perfect accuracy. There was no hiding anymore. Each cluster that formed was quickly surrounded and erased. Some alien captains tried to surrender by sending weak signals, but their messages were broken and unclear, and in the chaos of battle, there was no system yet to receive them. Their fear had come too late. The sky around Earth, once filled with the threat of extinction, was now filled with burning wreckage and fading light. On the surface of the planet, people watched in silence as reports showed alien ships falling again and again. Fear had turned into a strange mix of pride and sorrow, because they understood that victory always carried a heavy cost. Families of soldiers prayed not for glory, but for survival, for return, for the chance to see their loved ones again. The alien high command tried one last desperate move. They ordered a group of their largest remaining battleships to push directly toward Earth's defense line, hoping to break through and strike the planet itself, not to win, but to leave a scar, to make their invasion remembered. It was an act of rage, not strategy. Human sensors detected the movement instantly. General Hale's voice remained calm as he spoke, "All heavy units, intercept." Earth's largest warships turned as one, their massive weapons charging with deep power. The space between the two forces became thick with energy. When they fired, the light was blinding. The alien battleships were strong, their armor thick, their shields powerful, but they were not prepared for this level of force. One by one, their shields collapsed, their hulls cracked, and their engines failed. Some tried to continue forward even while burning, but their movement slowed, and they were destroyed before they could reach Earth's inner defense zone. The last of the charging group exploded in a massive flash that sent shockwaves of debris in all directions. That moment marked the true end of the invasion's hope. The remaining alien ships finally accepted what their minds had tried to deny. They could not win. They could not even survive if they stayed. Escape became their only goal. Ryan saw the change clearly on his screen as dozens, then hundreds of enemy ships turned their engines away from Earth and ran into deep space. Their paths crossed, collided, and tangled because fear had removed discipline. Some ships destroyed each other by accident, crashing in blind attempts to flee. Human fleets followed, not to chase every ship, but to control the direction of their escape, guiding them like frightened animals toward open space where they could be tracked and eliminated later if needed. The battle had become a lesson written in fire. General Hale ordered the fleets to slow their fire and choose targets carefully. He did not want blind destruction. He wanted survivors to carry a message. The galaxy needed to understand what had happened here. Earth was not a world to be hunted. Earth was a world that hunted back. Alien communication channels filled with chaos as captains begged for instructions that no longer came. Their leaders were dead or silent. Their systems were damaged. Their faith in their empire was broken. They had believed power was measured in numbers. Now they understood power was measured in preparation, unity, and will. Ryan leaned back in his seat for a moment, feeling the weight of hours of tension in his body. His hands were steady, but his heart felt heavy. He had destroyed more ships than he could count, and he knew each one carried lives, even if they were enemies. War had no winners, only survivors. Still, he reminded himself why they fought. If Earth had fallen, billions would have died. This was not revenge. This was protection. The battlefield slowly grew quieter as fewer alien ships remained within effective range. Explosions became less frequent. The constant alerts softened into slower updates. The number of enemy vessels dropped from thousands to hundreds, and then to fewer still. Space was filled with drifting metal, broken engines, and fading energy trails. What had once been the greatest invasion force the galaxy had ever seen was now a shattered memory. On Earth, leaders began to understand the scale of what humanity had just done. They had not only defended their planet, they had changed their place in the galaxy forever. Fear of Earth would spread faster than any message. Respect would follow. General Hale looked at the final battle map and spoke quietly, "Let them run." His officers understood. Survivors would carry the story. Survivors would warn others. In the deep darkness of space, the remaining alien ships fled, their engines burning with desperation, their minds filled with a single thought that would never leave them. They had entered Earth space as conquerors. They were leaving it as witnesses to humanity's wrath. The silence after the great explosions felt strange, because space was no longer full of endless fire but full of broken shadows drifting slowly, and the alien fleet was now a scattered group of wounded ships running without order. What once was an army had become a crowd of survivors fighting only for escape. Human fleets moved carefully, not with anger, not with rush, but with control. General Hale watched the map and saw that the enemy no longer had a center, no command structure, and no clear direction. This was the moment when fear ruled them completely. He gave the order to tighten the outer net, not to crush everything at once, but to remove hope little by little. Fast hunter ships moved ahead, blocking paths, forcing alien ships into narrow corridors of space where they could be tracked and handled easily. The aliens tried to scatter in different directions, but Earth scanners followed every movement. There was no darkness left for them to hide in. Ryan Cole saw one damaged alien cruiser trying to run with a broken engine, leaving a long trail of energy behind it like blood in water. He marked it, and another human ship joined him. Together they fired, not to destroy it, but to disable its weapons and engines. The alien ship slowed and drifted, powerless. Ryan stared at the screen for a second. The enemy was alive but helpless. He felt the weight of that moment. War had pushed him to see targets, not lives, but now he saw both. He reported the ship and moved on, because the battle was not finished, and hesitation could still cost Earth everything. Across the battlefield, similar scenes repeated. Some alien ships were destroyed, some were disabled, and some escaped deeper into space, carrying fear in their cores. The invasion had turned into survival, and survival had turned into shame. Inside one fleeing alien ship, the crew sat in silence, their pride shattered. They had been told Earth was weak, divided, and unprepared. Now they knew the truth. They were alive only because humans allowed space to remain open in some directions. That thought burned more than any wound. On Earth, news channels showed the change in the battle. Words like defense were replaced with control and containment. People realized the danger was passing, but they also felt the heavy cost of what had happened. Many human ships were gone. Many lives were lost. Victory did not feel light. It felt necessary. General Hale walked slowly through the command room, listening to quiet reports. He knew the aliens were no longer a direct threat, but chaos could still cause damage. A cornered enemy could strike blindly. He ordered the fleets to remain alert and to protect Earth's inner zones with full strength. The shields stayed active. The weapons stayed ready. Humanity would not relax until the last danger was gone. The alien survivors tried to form small groups again, hoping unity would bring courage, but their fear was too deep. Every shadow looked like a human ship. Every signal felt like a trap. Their movements became slow and careful, which made them even easier to follow. Ryan watched as 3 alien ships tried to hide behind a large wreckage field. He tracked their energy signatures and shared the data. Human ships moved around the debris silently and closed in. In seconds, the 3 alien ships were surrounded. One tried to fight, firing wildly, but its shots missed. The second shut down its weapons completely. The third attempted to flee and was destroyed instantly. The battle was no longer equal. It was controlled. It was final. Deep inside the alien command structure, what little remained of it, despair had replaced ambition. They no longer spoke of victory or honor. They spoke only of survival and return. Messages were sent toward their home regions, broken and rushed, warning of Earth's power, warning of hidden weapons, warning that humans were not a simple species. Many of these messages would never reach their destination. Some would, and those that did would change the galaxy. General Hale understood the value of fear. He knew that total destruction was not always the strongest message. Sometimes, survivors carried more power than silence. He ordered selective targeting. Let some escape. Let some remember. Let some tell the story of what happened here. Earth did not need to chase every shadow. Earth had already won. Ryan felt his body grow tired as the hours passed. Adrenaline faded, leaving behind exhaustion and thought. He watched an alien ship disappear into deep space, too far to follow without risk. He knew that ship would carry a story of terror and respect. He whispered, "Remember us," not with hate, but with calm certainty. The battlefield slowly became quieter. Explosions were now rare. Alerts came slower. The number of hostile ships dropped again and again. The sky that once threatened extinction now held only the remains of a failed invasion. Broken metal drifted like dead stars. Light faded. Space returned to its cold, endless silence. On Earth, people began to breathe again. Sirens stopped. Emergency shelters opened. Families came outside and looked up at the sky, knowing that something historic had just ended. They did not cheer loudly. They stood quietly, holding each other, understanding that survival itself was the victory. Leaders around the world prepared messages to the galaxy, not of threat, but of truth. Earth would defend itself. Earth would not be erased. The aliens who escaped would become living proof. General Hale stood before the final tactical map of the main battle zone and watched the last clusters of enemy ships disappear into deep space. He felt no pride, only responsibility. Humanity had crossed a line. They were no longer hidden. They were known. And with being known came danger and respect. He turned to his officers and said softly, "The invasion is broken. Now we prepare for what comes after." They understood. War was not only about battles. It was about what followed them. Ryan finally leaned back in his seat, closing his eyes for a moment. The weight of everything pressed on his chest. He thought of his family, of Earth, of how close they had come to losing everything. He opened his eyes and looked at the stars on his screen. They felt different now. Not distant. Not silent. They were watching. And somewhere out there, alien survivors were running through the dark, carrying fear, carrying memory, carrying the story of a planet that refused to die. The chase was no longer fast and loud like before, but slow and heavy, like the final steps of a wounded giant, because the alien fleet was now broken into scattered survivors moving through space with fear as their only guide. Human ships followed at a controlled distance, not rushing, not allowing mistakes, watching every movement carefully. General Hale understood that this phase was the most dangerous in a quiet way, because desperate enemies could still cause harm if they were ignored. He ordered constant scanning, constant tracking, and constant readiness. Earth would not allow a single hidden strike. Ryan Cole watched the sensor screen as several alien ships changed direction suddenly, trying to confuse the trackers. He adjusted his controls and locked onto their energy signatures. Their engines were unstable, their shields weak, and their movements slow. These were no longer warriors. These were survivors running from a nightmare. One alien ship tried to fire a last-week attack toward a human hunter vessel, but its weapon failed mid-charge and the ship drifted helplessly. Ryan marked it and moved on, knowing other units would handle it. The battlefield felt different now. It was not about speed or power. It was about certainty. Every human move was final. Every alien move was fear-driven. Across the fleet, Earth's ships tightened their control zones, guiding the escape paths in specific directions. They were not hurting the aliens to save them. They were hurting them so their stories would spread in the galaxy in a clear way. On Earth, leaders watched the tactical feeds and understood that this was no longer a war for survival, but a shaping of the future. How this ended would decide how the galaxy saw humanity. The alien survivors tried to communicate with each other, but their systems were damaged and their trust was broken. Some ships ignored calls for help, afraid of traps. Others begged for guidance that never came. Their empire had sent them to conquer, but now it had abandoned them to fate. Inside one damaged alien cruiser, the crew sat in darkness as emergency lights flickered. They had lost power, lost direction, and lost belief. One of them whispered that Earth was not a planet, it was a test, and they had failed it. That thought spread among them like cold fire. Ryan saw a cluster of alien ships gathering near a debris field, trying to hide among the wreckage. He reported it, and human ships slowly surrounded the area, shutting down escape routes. There was no dramatic attack, no bright explosions, only controlled strikes that disabled engines and weapons. One by one, the alien ships went dark, drifting silently. The space around them felt like a graveyard where sound and pride had both died. General Hale nodded when he saw the report. This was the result he wanted. Control. Finality. He ordered the fleets to continue selective pressure and to allow only the fastest and farthest ships to escape. The message had to be carried, but the cost of the invasion had to be clear. Humanity was not cruel. Humanity was precise. Ryan felt his breath slow as the chaos faded. His body still remembered the tension, but his mind now worked with quiet focus. He watched one alien ship hesitate at the edge of a control zone, unsure whether to move forward or turn back. That hesitation was the clearest sign of defeat. Fear had replaced strategy. The ship finally turned away and fled deeper into space. Ryan did not follow. He knew its path was already recorded. Its story was already written. On Earth, people began to understand that the danger was truly ending. Emergency networks slowly returned to normal. Hospitals treated the wounded. Rescue teams prepared for recovery missions. But no celebration filled the streets. Only relief and silence. Humanity had stood at the edge of extinction and stepped back, but the memory would never leave. The alien survivors pushed their engines harder, damaging them further in their panic. Some ships failed and stopped completely, drifting forever in empty space. Others collided with debris and vanished without anyone watching. Their retreat was not organized. It was a collapse of will. General Hale studied the long-range projections and counted the remaining hostile signals. The number was falling steadily. He spoke to his officers and said, "They are no longer an invasion. They are a warning in motion." The officers understood. Every escaping ship was a message traveling faster than any broadcast. The galaxy would hear about Earth not through words, but through fear carried by witnesses. Ryan saw one last strong alien warship moving with surprising control, protecting several smaller vessels behind it. Its shields were damaged, but its formation held. He admired its discipline for a moment. Then he locked his target. Human ships joined him. Together they fired, not wildly, but in a focused line that broke through the shield and shut down its engines. The large ship drifted, powerless, and the smaller ships scattered in panic, leaving their protector behind. Ryan felt no satisfaction, only understanding. Loyalty had died. Survival had replaced honor. The battlefield now stretched far from Earth, but its echo remained strong. Human fleets slowed their movement, shifting from attack posture to control posture. The final phase was not about destruction. It was about certainty. No alien ship would return unnoticed. No threat would hide in silence. Earth had learned the value of watchfulness. In the dark of space, the remaining alien survivors moved like shadows, afraid to stop, afraid to rest, afraid to trust even each other. They had seen too much. They had lost too much. Their belief in their own strength was gone. On Earth, General Hale prepared a quiet message to be recorded for the future, not for celebration, but for memory. He wanted humanity to remember this day not as a victory of power, but as a victory of preparation and unity. Ryan leaned back slightly and closed his eyes for a short moment. He felt older than he had hours before. War had a way of changing time. When he opened his eyes, he saw only stars and faint signals of retreating enemies. The sky felt larger, but also closer. Humanity had stepped into it openly now. The last reports came in slowly, each confirming the same truth. The invasion was finished. The slaughter had failed. The survivors were fleeing. Earth was alive. And somewhere in the dark, alien ships were carrying a story they would never escape, the story of a planet that had been chosen as prey and had answered as a predator. The space around Earth felt different now, not filled with panic or fire, but with a deep and heavy quiet, because the invasion had ended and what remained was only the shadow of what had almost happened, and the broken pieces of a fleet that once believed it could erase a world. Human ships moved slowly, scanning wide areas, tracking the last weak signals of alien survivors that were still drifting or running far away into the dark. General Hale stood in the command center watching the long-range maps where only a few hostile marks remained, and he knew this phase was about responsibility, not battle. Earth had won, but winning brought new duties. The galaxy would soon learn what had happened, and how Earth acted now would shape that story forever. Ryan Cole studied the sensor feed with tired eyes. His body felt heavy, but his mind stayed sharp. He watched a group of damaged alien ships disappear beyond the safe tracking line. They were too far to follow without risk, and he knew that was by design. They were meant to escape. They were meant to carry fear and memory. He whispered quietly, "Go and remember." Around him, the command room was calm, almost silent. There was no cheering, no celebration, only quiet understanding that history had changed. The alien fleet had entered as conquerors, but now they left as witnesses. Human fleets began to form wide defensive lines around Earth, not to attack, but to protect. This was no longer a battlefield. This was a border. A new one, built with fire and sacrifice. On Earth, governments slowly lowered emergency levels. Cities began to return to normal life. But people did not forget. They looked at the sky differently now, not as a distant place, but as a living space where danger and destiny existed together. Families hugged longer. Voices were softer. Humanity had survived, and survival felt sacred. The alien survivors moved deeper into space with damaged engines and broken systems. Their ships were no longer symbols of power. They were moving graves of pride. Inside those ships, silence ruled. No one spoke of conquest anymore. They spoke only of escape, of warning, of how close they had come to total destruction. One alien officer stared at a broken control screen and said quietly that Earth was not a world, it was a shield made of will. His words carried no anger, only truth. Ryan saw a small alien vessel drifting without power. It had no weapons active, no shields, and no movement. It was not trying to hide. It was simply waiting. He reported it. Human ships approached carefully and disabled it fully. There was no explosion, no violence. Just control. The alien crew inside were alive, but defeated. They would become prisoners, not trophies, not symbols, but proof. Proof that Earth could destroy, and Earth could also choose not to. General Hale approved the action. He knew prisoners would speak louder than wreckage. They would confirm the story that Earth was not driven by blind rage, but by purpose. Humanity was not cruel. Humanity was firm. The galaxy would need to understand that difference. Across the battle zone, recovery operations began. Human ships collected survivors, marked debris fields, and recorded data. This was not just cleanup. This was history being written carefully. Every destroyed ship, every escape path, Every final movement was being stored for the future. Earth had stepped into a new role, and it had to act wisely. Ryan felt the weight of what they had done. Not just as soldiers, but as the first guardians of Earth's place among the stars. He knew future generations would ask what happened here, and the answer would decide how humanity was treated. The remaining alien ships moved like ghosts, far apart, avoiding each other, afraid of even their own kind. Trust had died among them. They had seen what happened to unity when fear took control. They had learned that numbers without preparation meant nothing. Some ships sent broken signals into deep space, warning their worlds not to touch Earth, not to provoke, not to assume weakness again. Those signals carried terror more powerful than any weapon. On Earth, scientists and leaders gathered to study the alien technology left behind. They did not see it as loot. They saw it as a lesson. A reminder that the galaxy was wide, dangerous, and full of unknown forces. Humanity could not return to isolation. The universe had noticed them. General Hale spoke to the world in a quiet address, not filled with pride, but with honesty. He said Earth had defended itself, not because it wanted war, but because it refused extinction. His words were simple, and they carried strength. Ryan listened from his station and felt a strange calm. The fear that once filled his chest was gone, replaced by something heavier, responsibility. He had helped decide the fate of his species. That was not a victory to celebrate. It was a duty to respect. The final hostile signals faded from close space. Only distant echoes remained. Human fleets shifted fully into defensive formation. The stars around Earth looked peaceful again, but everyone knew peace now had a different meaning. It was not silence. It was readiness. The alien survivors would never forget what they had seen. They would speak of human ships that moved like shadows, of weapons that erased fleets, of a planet that did not beg, did not fall, and did not hesitate. Their stories would spread fear, yes, but also respect. And respect was more powerful than fear. Ryan looked at the stars on his screen and felt that humanity had crossed an invisible line. They were no longer hidden children of the universe. They were adults in a dangerous galaxy. The sky was no longer a mystery. It was a responsibility. The alien fleet had entered with 9,900 ships. Now only a small number remained, scattered, broken, and carrying a message they did not choose, but were forced to deliver. Earth was not weak. Earth was not silent. Earth was awake. The number on the main screen was no longer terrifying because it was no longer large, and that truth alone showed how much had changed, because from thousands of invading ships only a few signals remained, moving slowly and carefully through deep space like wounded animals afraid of every shadow. General Hale studied the long-range display and spoke quietly, "Count them." The officers ran the calculations again and again, checking every signal, every energy trace, every heat mark. The final number appeared and stayed the same. 17. Only 17 alien ships still carried enough power to escape Earth's control zone. From 9,900 to 17. The room fell into a heavy silence, not of pride, not of celebration, but of understanding. This was not just a victory. This was a message written in fire across the stars. Ryan Cole stared at the number on his screen and felt his breath slow. 17. It felt unreal. He remembered the first moment when thousands of red dots had filled the sky, when fear had crushed his chest and made him question if humanity would see another sunrise. Now those dots were gone, replaced by a small group of fading signals that looked fragile and weak. The invaders who had come as executioners were leaving as survivors, carrying terror instead of power. Human fleets adjusted their positions carefully, not to destroy the last ships, but to guide their path away from Earth in a controlled direction. These ships were not being chased like enemies anymore. They were being released like warnings. General Hale understood the importance of this moment. If all were destroyed, the galaxy might only see silence and mystery. But if some lived, the truth would travel faster than any broadcast. Earth did not need to shout. Earth only needed witnesses. The alien ships moved in a tight, fearful formation, keeping distance from each other, yet close enough to feel some false sense of safety. Their engines were damaged, their shields unstable, and their weapons barely functional. They did not dare to test Earth's patience. One wrong move could erase them from existence. Inside one of those ships, the alien crew sat in near darkness, surrounded by broken systems and silent alarms. They had stopped speaking about victory long ago. Now they spoke only of escape and memory. One of them whispered that their empire would never believe what had happened unless someone lived to tell it. Another replied that the empire would believe because fear would be written in their eyes. Ryan tracked the group from a distance, making sure their path remained clear and controlled. He felt a strange mix of relief and sadness. Relief that Earth was safe. Sadness that so much death had been required to make that truth known. He understood that this was the cost of being unprepared for peace. The human fleets formed a wide corridor of space, open only in one direction, guiding the survivors outward like a river guides broken ships to the sea. The alien captains sensed this control. They knew they were being allowed to leave, not because they had earned mercy, but because their survival served a greater purpose. That knowledge was more painful than defeat. On Earth, leaders watched the final phase in silence. The invasion that threatened extinction had ended in a way no one imagined. Humanity was not only alive. Humanity was now feared. News networks reported the final count, and people struggled to understand it. 17 ships. Just 17. From a force meant to erase a planet. Many cried, not in joy, but in shock. The scale of what had almost been lost, and what had been defended, was too large for celebration. Families held each other tighter. The sky felt closer than ever before. The alien ships increased their speed as they moved farther from Earth, pushing damaged engines to their limits. Some systems failed, some shields flickered, but they did not stop. Stopping meant death or capture. Moving forward meant survival and a chance to warn their kind. They were no longer soldiers. They were messengers shaped by terror. General Hale gave a final order. Do not pursue beyond this line. The fleets obeyed. Human ships slowed and stopped, forming a final defensive arc. Beyond it, the alien survivors vanished into the darkness of deep space. The battle was officially over. The war had left its mark. Ryan leaned back in his seat and closed his eyes for a moment. His hands still shook slightly. He had been part of something that would change history, not just for Earth, but for the galaxy. When he opened his eyes, the main screen showed empty space where death and fire had once ruled. It looked peaceful, but he knew peace now had a different meaning. Peace was no longer safety. Peace was readiness. On the alien ships, fear mixed with disbelief. They had seen human weapons erase fleets, seen human ships move with perfect unity, seen a planet rise like a hidden giant. They knew their empire had made a terrible mistake. One of them said quietly that Earth was not a world to conquer, but a force to respect. That sentence became their truth. They repeated it in their minds as the distance between them and Earth grew. Human recovery teams began their work, collecting data, marking wreckage, and honoring the fallen. This was not a victory parade. It was a moment of reflection. Every destroyed ship, human and alien, carried lives that would never return. Humanity had survived, but it had also changed. General Hale recorded a message for the Global Council. He did not speak of glory. He spoke of responsibility. He said Earth had been tested and had answered, and now Earth must be wise, because the galaxy would be watching closely. Ryan listened to the recording and felt a quiet pride mixed with deep caution. Power without control would only bring another war. The last sensor confirmation arrived. 17 alien ships were confirmed beyond Earth's tracking zone, moving away at maximum speed. The count was final. The story was written. The sky that once held an execution force now held only memory. On Earth, people slowly returned to daily life, but nothing felt normal. The universe no longer felt distant. It felt present. The alien survivors would carry this moment across the stars, telling worlds of a planet that had been marked for death and had answered with unity, preparation, and strength. They would speak of how 9,900 ships entered Earth space and how only 17 left. They would speak of humanity's wrath not as blind anger, but as controlled power. Ryan looked once more at the empty map and whispered, "Let them remember." He knew memory was stronger than any weapon. The 17 ships vanished into the dark, and with them went the old image of Earth as weak and divided. A new image was born, carried by fear, respect, and survival. Earth was no longer just a planet. Earth was a warning written in the stars. The calm after the final flight of the alien ships felt strange and heavy because the battle had ended, but its echo remained across space and on Earth. Human fleets had slowed, their weapons cooled, their shields maintained in quiet readiness, scanning empty space for the faintest trace of the survivors. General Hale studied the maps, watching for signals that might still appear, knowing that even the smallest trace could hide danger. Every officer in the command room worked with a quiet focus, not because fear remained, but because responsibility had grown heavier than it had ever been. The invasion was over, but the aftermath was only beginning. Ryan Cole moved between screens, checking sensor feeds and analyzing data. He saw the remnants of alien ships drifting far into deep space, some slowly losing power, others intact but terrified. Their movements were erratic, their engines weak, their communication broken. They were no longer conquerors. They were messengers carrying the truth of what had happened, the story of Earth's wrath. On Earth, cities were waking to a new reality. People stepped outside into the quiet night sky, looking upward in a way they never had before. The stars felt closer, and the darkness of space no longer seemed empty. Families held each other, not in celebration, but in recognition of survival. They had witnessed the edge of extinction and had stepped back. Humanity had endured. Inside one alien ship, the crew sat in darkness, nursing damaged systems and wounded pride. They had thought Earth would be easy prey, weak and divided, but now they carried a fear that would follow them for the rest of their lives. Some whispered that their empire would never believe what had happened unless someone survived to tell the story. Others said the memory itself would be punishment enough. Ryan tracked a group of 3 small ships trying to navigate through a debris field. Their shields were flickering, and their engines burned unevenly. He knew they were not a threat, but he followed protocol. One shot disabled the engines of the lead ship, forcing the others to slow. The ships drifted helplessly, their crews realizing that even escape was under Earth's control. General Hale approved the action. Not every ship would be destroyed, but every move would be watched. Humanity's message was not in chaos, but in precision. Across the galaxy, the survivors of the fleet would carry fear and respect, not just news. Humanity had shown that numbers alone did not determine power. Preparation, unity, and will did. Ryan felt the weight of the long hours pressing on him. His hands were tired, but his mind stayed sharp. He understood that the battle had changed everything. Earth was no longer just a homeworld, it was a symbol. The alien survivors had begun to drift further into the void, their formations collapsing as panic replaced order. They tried to communicate with each other, but systems failed and signals were lost in deep space. Their empire's plans had crumbled. Their pride had been shattered. They were no longer soldiers, they were witnesses. General Hale spoke softly to his officers, "Record everything. Every movement, every trace, every survivor. Let the galaxy remember what happened here." The officers understood. Data now mattered more than destruction. Proof mattered more than rage. Every alien ship that escaped with memory intact would carry the story, ensuring that Earth would never be underestimated again. Ryan monitored the final signals. One of the last surviving ships, a larger cruiser that had protected smaller vessels, drifted slowly toward the edge of sensor range. Its shields flickered, and Ryan knew it would survive only because it had followed the corridor set by human fleets. He reported it and watched it disappear into deep space. The sense of finality was overwhelming. Across Earth, people began to comprehend the scale of what had happened. Emergency services returned to routine, but the memory of fire in the skies lingered. Humanity had faced extinction and had survived against impossible odds. Across the battlefield, human recovery teams began their work. They collected damaged ships, marked debris, and documented every detail of alien technology. This was not looting. It was history being preserved. Every piece of metal, every energy reading, every trace of the enemy carried lessons that would shape humanity's future. Ryan leaned back for a brief moment, closing his eyes. He thought of those who had fallen, those who had survived, and those who would carry the story forward. His body ached, but his mind was focused on the new reality. The universe had changed its view of Earth. The alien fleet that had entered with 9,900 ships now numbered 17 survivors. They carried fear, memory, and a warning that would echo across the stars. General Hale addressed the command room, "The invasion is over, but our responsibility is not. We must remain vigilant. The galaxy now knows our power, and the story will spread." Officers nodded, understanding that war had ended, but duty had not. Ryan watched the dark expanse of space, where the remaining alien ships slowly disappeared. Their paths would be recorded, their energy trails analyzed, and their stories remembered. Humanity had survived, but the war had changed everything. Earth was no longer just a planet. It was a force, a warning, a presence the galaxy could no longer ignore. The final sensors confirmed that the 17 survivors had crossed the outer boundary of Earth's control zone. They moved quickly now, far from the reach of human ships, but they were not free. Every action they took would carry the memory of what had happened. Ryan whispered quietly, "Let them never forget." Across the world, people looked at the stars and understood that survival had a price, but it had also brought a new sense of purpose. Humanity had faced annihilation and had answered with unity, precision, and strength. The alien survivors would carry that truth, and with it, the legend of a planet that refused to die, a planet that had become a predator when hunted, and a warning to all who might think Earth could be conquered. The final phase of the battle left a strange stillness over space, because the alien fleet was no longer an army, no longer a threat, and only a handful of survivors drifted far from Earth, their engines weak, their shields flickering, and their systems damaged beyond repair. General Hale stood in the command center, watching the long-range screens, knowing that this quiet was heavier than any explosion. It carried meaning, responsibility, and the weight of survival. The numbers were clear. 9,900 ships had entered Earth's space, and only 17 remained. Those 17 carried fear, memory, and the undeniable truth of humanity's power. Ryan Cole sat at his console, tired but alert, scanning for any irregularities, any hidden signals that might indicate a surprise attack. There were none. The survivors were far, moving away in random paths that were tracked carefully but not pursued. Human ships held their positions, forming defensive arcs that reminded the galaxy that Earth was no longer vulnerable. The alien ships tried to communicate with one another, sending broken messages into the void, but most were lost or delayed. Confusion ruled them. Some still attempted coordination, but fear had replaced strategy. They were no longer soldiers, they were carriers of a story they did not want to tell, but that would define their empire forever. On Earth, people stepped outside to watch the quiet sky, a sky that had once burned with fire and destruction. Children held their parents' hands, and adults felt the weight of survival press into their hearts. Humanity had faced extinction and had won not through luck, not through numbers, but through preparation, unity, and precision. The remaining alien ships drifted further into the darkness, some trying to patch damaged engines, others simply fleeing with minimal power. Inside one cruiser, an alien officer whispered that Earth had shown a level of planning no empire could ignore. His words spread quietly among the crew, sowing fear and awe in equal measure. Ryan watched as the final signals faded from the main tracking screens. The 17 survivors were beyond effective range. They were free, but not unmarked. Their journey would carry knowledge and terror across the galaxy, and the story of Earth's wrath would grow in every system they passed. General Hale gave a single command: maintain perimeter. Document everything. Let the story travel. Human officers understood. The lesson was not destruction, but precision and control. Every action had been deliberate. Every move had carried meaning. Across Earth, recovery teams began to examine debris fields, collect wreckage, and preserve evidence. Scientists worked to understand the technology left behind, not to exploit, but to learn. Every signal, every ship fragment, every energy trace carried knowledge that would protect Earth in the future. Ryan felt the exhaustion in his body, but also a quiet satisfaction in his mind. Humanity had survived, and they had done so decisively. The galaxy had witnessed it. The alien survivors carried fear and memory like a weapon more powerful than any beam or missile. They had entered to conquer, but they would leave only as witnesses. General Hale addressed the command room quietly: "The invasion is over. The galaxy now knows Earth's answer. Our duty continues, but today we have proven what it means to defend our world." Officers nodded, knowing that survival had a cost, but the cost had been worth it. Ryan leaned back slightly, watching the stars on his screen. Space felt alive, aware, and human eyes would now always watch it with new respect. The alien survivors would tell their stories, and the galaxy would listen. Their empires would understand that Earth was not a weak planet to be erased. Earth was a force, prepared and united, and the cost of underestimating it was now written in fire and fear. Slowly, the main screens went blank, showing only empty darkness dotted with distant stars. The battle had ended, but its echo would last forever. Humanity had survived the greatest test it had ever faced. Earth had become a predator when hunted. Ryan whispered quietly to himself, "We endured. We survived. We warned them." The 17 alien ships moved farther away with every second, but they carried the memory of humanity's wrath, the proof of a planet that refused to die, and the warning that no force in the galaxy would approach lightly again. General Hale allowed himself a rare breath of relief. He did not smile. Relief was not victory. Responsibility remained. Earth had survived, and now it must be vigilant. Humanity had stepped fully into the galaxy's stage, and it had announced itself as a force that would not bow. The survivors of the alien fleet would carry that truth, spreading fear, respect, and caution wherever they went. Earth was no longer hidden. Earth was known. Earth was alive, prepared, and awake. The war had ended, but the story had just begun, because the galaxy would now remember the planet that had faced 9,900 ships and left 17 alive. Humanity had written its legend in the stars, not through pride, not through arrogance, but through determination, unity, and survival. Ryan sat back, exhausted, but aware that he had witnessed history. Earth was safe, but the universe had changed its perception forever. The sky, once a threat, now held the proof of human will. The final alien signals disappeared, leaving only darkness and memory. Earth had endured. Earth had won. Earth had become the warning that no one would forget.